We're glad to have you join us on today's edition of Business Incorporated. Welcome to the program. I am Bolaji Akinwale. Coming up, the President of the European Council appeals to British voters to stay in the European Union. Also, reactions from the commodities markets as prices of agri-products drop. Plus, we bring you updates from the local fixed income markets. Okay, let's begin with the story that says that the legendary investor George Soros has warned of serious consequences for British jobs and finances if the country leaves the EU. According to reports, Soros said that the sterling would decline if the Leave camp won Thursday's vote. He also said that leaving the EU would see the sterling fall by at least 15% and possibly more than 20% to below $1.15 from its current level of around $1.46. Mr. Soros made a fortune betting against the pound on Black Wednesday in 1992 when Britain left the ERM and said Brexit would cause even bigger disruption. Still on the Brexit, European Council President Donald Tusk has issued a direct appeal to British voters, urging them to stay in the European Union at this week's referendum. His appeal comes just days before the history-making event.
European Council President Donald Tusk issued a direct appeal to British voters, urging them to vote to stay in the EU in an upcoming referendum. Britain's vote on June 23rd on the future of their membership of the European Union. 3 opinion polls ahead of Thursday's vote showed the Remain camp recovering some momentum after a dip last week, although the overall picture remained one of an evenly split electorate. The implied probability of a Remain vote rose to around 78% after falling as low as 60% last Thursday, according to odds from gambling website Betfair. Tusk said a Brexit would weaken not just Europe, but the Western world, and warned it could encourage Eurosceptics across the bloc and bring about disintegration of the EU. A British exit from the EU, already shaken by differences over migration and the future of the Eurozone, will rip away its second-largest economy, one of its top 2 military powers, and by far its richest financial center. Referendum campaigning resumes on Sunday after a 3-day hiatus following the killing of a pro-EU lawmaker.
And now to the markets. Asia closed mixed on Tuesday, with most major markets extending Monday's global rally on easing Brexit concerns and gains in oil prices. In Japan, the benchmark Nikkei 225 closed up at 16,169.11, retracing its earlier losses of more than 1% as the yen weakened against the dollar. Across the Korean Strait, the Kospi closed near flat at 1,982.70. Australia's ASX 200 advanced 0.33% to 5,274.36, boosted by a 0.68% increase in the financial sub-index that accounts for nearly half of the broader index. Chinese mainland markets finished lower, with the Shanghai Composite down 0.34% and the Shenzhen Composite finished lower by 1.01%. And European stocks ticked slightly higher on Tuesday, taking a breather after a sharp gain seen in the previous session following polls that allayed fears of a Brexit. Let's cross over now to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange and see how the market is bracing up for the EU referendum vote. DW TV Channel TV correspondent Olaf Krieger joins me from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Olaf, welcome to the program. Now, Germany's Constitutional Court has ruled that the European Central Bank's outright monetary transactions program was not illegal and can be used. How will this decision affect the ECB's bond buying program, especially struggling Eurozone members?
The Eurozone members, many of them are still in trouble and the economies are still flat. So, and this is quite interesting because few observers had expected the biggest German court to torpedo the policy of the ECB, the policy of Mario Draghi, and now they are saying something like both thumbs up. Go on, Super Mario, and try whatever it takes, whatever it needs to bring more stability into the Eurozone, more stability also for the Euro. And this is, of course, a very remarkable, a landmark decision 2 days ahead of the most important decision in the European Union. So much applause here in Frankfurt.
Of course, the U.S. Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen is due to make comments today. What do investors expect from the Fed as they stayed on edge for Brexit-related developments?
Hopefully some good news coming out from the U.S. economy, from the very difficult labor market especially. But many investors, many analysts here are quite convinced that there will be no decision regarding the interest rates or regarding the foreign policy of the Federal Reserve in the U.S. And Janet Yellen, she's the chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, probably pointed out some interesting things coming from the U.S. economy. But as I said again, no decisions about the interest rates policy from the Federal Reserve in the U.S.
And the market is taking a breather, as I said earlier on, after polls show that the Remain camp is gaining momentum in the UK. Can you bring us up to speed concerning the mood at the markets today?
Well, the mood, I have to say, is pretty good. As you might can see behind me, German top shares are in positive territory, and all over Europe, the stock market's in a quite good condition. And I think it's because of the polls showing still a neck-to-neck race between the two camps in the UK, but investors and traders are pretty much convinced that this will come to a good end. That means the decision of the British will be, yeah, let's stay in the European Union because this is the best thing we can do. So the situation and the mood here in Frankfurt is pretty good. Until now, you never know what's going to happen. We are 2 days ahead of this decision.
Olaf Krieger, DWTV Channels TV correspondent, thank you for your time. Now let's take a look at happenings from the Nasdaq stock market as VOA Channels TV correspondent Jill Malandrino reports from the largest tech bourse in the world.
Good evening from the Nasdaq market site in Times Square. U.S. stocks opened sharply higher following a volatile week of trade. We could take a look at the board here and see the Dow Jones Industrial Average and Nasdaq are both up over 1.5%, and the S&P 500 is flirting with 2,100. This is all happening as polls showed support for Britain staying in the EU, regaining momentum before Thursday's referendum. Global equities also rallied, and the pound strengthened the most since 2008. The yen declined with U.S. Treasuries, and gold as safe haven demand eased. People generally don't like change and indecision. Leaving the EU clearly spells huge change for Britain, which may try to avoid with a stay vote. And that is clearly what we're seeing here today. If UK voters choose to leave, Prime Minister Cameron would have to notify the European Council. Next would be a 2-year negotiating process to work out the details of the exit. In other words, the June 23rd vote is not an isolated event where all issues are magically resolved the following day. Only a handful of economic data are on tap this week, including existing and new home sales and durable goods orders. But not all will be quiet in the macro world, as Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen is scheduled to testify Tuesday and Wednesday on monetary policy to the Senate Banking Committee. She most likely will refer to the Federal Open Markets Committee decision to keep interest rates unchanged in June, Brexit concerns, the disappointing jobs report, and lower growth forecasts. The earnings calendar is still very quiet and will remain light until the season picks up in the second week of July. However, there are some reports to be aware of, including home builder Lennar, FedEx, KB Homes, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Conagra. From the Nasdaq market site in New York City, I'm Jill Malandrino for Channels TV.
Thank you, Jill. Still ahead on Business Incorporated, food prices have dropped significantly. Details when we return.